Awesome. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and pass it over to Nat and let her finish introducing herself and stick right into things. Thanks again so much, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandon. I am just going to share my screen real quick and then I will continue the show. Mhm. Oops. We want this. You all are going to have to be really patient with me throughout this. I am definitely outdoor instructor first before I'm any sort of
No
computer
worries.
anything.
No worries.
All right. Slideshow. So, welcome to
Yep.
trip planning. Super excited to have you all here. Thank you for showing up. My name's Natalie. I go by they, them, or she, hers, and I am currently in Treaty 7 territory, as well as Métis Region 3 land. This will show up on Google Maps as Canmore, Alberta. This is where I live and do a couple of my jobs, including Outward Bound. But like Brandon said, I also instruct with Knowles, which is a program based in the States, and get to travel around a little bit with that. And also currently I'm working for a wilderness therapy program, working with folks with substance addiction. Um, Prior to that, some of my stuff looks like guiding and other outdoor ed lodges. And the reason I'm just sort of giving you this background is if you have questions about how this stuff shows up in different workspaces, I'm really happy to speak to that and answer those questions. I'm mostly going to focus on just how to set yourself up to go out and do your own trips so that you can start building your own wilderness resumes. Um, but happy to speak about what it might look like when you're actually on a job site and some of the little differences I've seen between various programs. Now I'm really excited to do introductions with you all. I would love to hear your name. Totally optional if you want to share your pronouns, where you're at. If you don't know the Indigenous territory of where you're at, that's totally fine. But I would for sure encourage you to do some research and look into that, especially if you're going to be sharing and exploring these spaces with other people. Having that understanding of who else has caretaken and spent time in that space. It's pretty important. As well, I would love to hear about a time, this might make you a little vulnerable, but a time that you felt potentially unprepared for an outdoor adventure. And with that, any tips or tricks that you pulled from it. And if no moment is coming to mind, you're welcome to just share like one tip or trick that you've come across during your times. So name where you're at and either a story or a tip or trick that you have for feeling a little more prepared in the outdoors. And how about I'll just start with Herbert and then we'll pass it around.
Yes, I'm Herbert. My pronouns are they, them, and I am queer and non-binary. And I am from the Coast Salish territory of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, which is Vancouver. And I have been in the training academy, the classroom portion in Vancouver Island. And a time that we felt unprepared for an outdoor adventure. I would say it was actually one of the day hikes in the training academy, the classroom portion. There was a really long hike that we did from the base camp in Mount Washington towards the Cruikshank Canyon. And because it was a new program and like relatively few people have explored this trail, I wasn't mentally prepared, and the hike turned out to be much longer than what I had mentally and physically prepared. So I was just completely exhausted by the end of that, and the result was an 11-hour sleep after that, which I felt better. But obviously, like if I had the mental preparation, like trail maps, elevation detail, and suggestions of like what kind of food to bring for such a long adventure, I think I would have been a lot better than what I had been at the time. So I think that would be the tips and tricks. Yeah, like food, trail maps, sufficient water, even the weather. Those are good tips, but I can go on further for that.
Amazing. You basically just said what our itinerary is for today. So that's great.
Yes.
Who'd you like to pass it to?
I'm gonna pass it to Laura.
Thank you. I'm so sorry about the camera. I couldn't fix it. Next time I'm gonna try to be ready for that. I didn't know it wasn't working. So my apologies. Here in Toronto, it is already at night here. But really excited to be here. My name, Laura, pronounced she, her. And at times you feel unprepared for an outdoor adventure. Well, this is not especially an outdoor adventure, but it was 12 years ago when I came to Canada. My family was living at the time in Toronto, and I had an appointment. I don't even remember for what, in I think Etobicoke or something. And I didn't really know the city very well, anything. But I decided to give it a go. And it was one day before St. Patrick's, and didn't know about anything about the weather. I was wearing tights, a skirt, boots, a light jacket, and it was a green jacket. And it was just like a very summery during winter. So I just went outside, and I didn't know how I ended in Guelph. So everything I know was I was coming out of the bus station, had no idea where I was, no phone, nothing. And I was extremely cold and suffering, and I was afraid. And I was feeling like, oh my gosh, where I am, and I'm totally unprepared for this moment. That's the where I felt the most unprepared in my entire life. And the funny thing is that there was a superstore nearby, so I decided to go inside the superstore. And then one guy asked me, you know that St. Patrick is tomorrow, right? So I had no even idea that it was St. Patrick the next day. But it was the funny thing.
Awesome. Thanks. Guess we'll pass it over to Samuel. Hey, do you prefer Sam or Samuel?
Sam's great. I just use Samuel for all my like sign up kind of names.
Official name. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So yeah, I'm Samuel Hunter. My pronouns are he, him. So I am in the unceded territory of Mi'kmaq or the Wabanaki people, which is kind of encompasses Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, some of Quebec, and it kind of goes down into like Maine as well. So it's a kind of general area of this indigenous culture. Yeah, happy to be here. And a story. So there was this one time I was out in a sailboat with my friend, and so it was the starting of my dad kind of relinquishing control of the sailboat and letting me kind of take it out every once in a while. And it's like a little 22-foot boat that I'm from PEI originally, and we would sail on the Northumberland Strait. And it was a bit of a kind of jerry-rigged vessel, but we were me and my friend were out, and suddenly it was like a nice evening sail, and then suddenly the wind whips up like super strong, and all of a sudden like it was pretty calm day before that, and there was like, we had our big jib up, and the mainsail was like all the way up. and all of a sudden we had to like, it was mad dash. My friend who didn't have very much sailing experience I was trying to you know, stop the boat from like sailing so much, basically, with all the wind, and trying to put it into irons and trim all the sails. And it was super, it kind of came up super abruptly, and it was yeah, it was a real kind of scary instance that I was definitely unprepared and slightly out of control of. Like some good old-fashioned type 2 fun though. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Brandon, are you wanting to do a little bit of an introduction? I know you're going to sneak out in a little bit here, but you're a cool guy, so you might as well
Oh.
introduce yourself.
Thanks, Nat. Yeah, I'll introduce myself just to leave, but that'll leave folks wanting more. I'm hosting a webinar later this month, so we'll hang out then. But yeah, my name's Brandon. My pronouns are he, him. At this moment, I'm in the state of Kentucky, the traditional land of the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, and the Shawnee people, as well as many other indigenous people that still currently call this land home. And similar, yeah, a time that I felt unprepared was certainly when weather just like happened upon me, and it was a beautiful day in June, hiking along a ridge in Kananaskis country, Alberta. And we started out in Canmore. It was hot. I was almost wishing I wasn't wearing long pants. By the time we got like into the mountains a little bit more, I was thankful I was wearing long pants. And by the time we got to kind of the crest of the ridge, I was wishing I had my winter coat and other things with me. We have a before and after shot, and when we started the hike, like I said, it was a hot sunny day, and when we finished the hike, there was like a fresh like 6 inches of snow on the ground. When we were up on top of the ridge, there was static electricity in the air, and we were kind of getting shocked from a few different angles, and feeling scared that things could go wrong. And yeah, I mean, largely the tip, the trick that I learned from that is just really take a look at your weather forecast, know the areas that you're hiking in, and how weather kind of changes on a more local scale. Because yeah, we were looking at a mountain, and then like looked at another view, and then looked back, and the mountain was just, it was gone like in 10 seconds, and then we were engulfed in the cloud ourselves. So yeah, it was a great time though.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandon. Thanks for joining us for the first few minutes too. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Okay. So all of us have these experiences where it might have been helpful to have a bit of a plan and prep and proper gear to be out there. I know for myself, a memory that came to mind when you all were speaking was when I discovered just what wind is essentially. I was living in Iceland for the year, and I grew up in Alberta, pretty far from the ocean, and this was just, everything was exposed to these blasts of wind off of the ocean. And if you've ever spent any time in Iceland, there's no trees to break that wind barrier. And I was running to the bus, and I knew that I could get to that bus. Like it was like 30 seconds away, but there was like this invisible wall holding me back. And that was when I was like, whoa, okay, wind, it's a thing, and it's different depending on where you are and what the landscape is. And just be, I guess my tip from that, or my like lesson from that, was things that seem like really normal to you in one place, like your understanding of it in one place, might have a totally different meaning in a new place that you go to. And just have to keep an open mind when you're doing these activities while traveling. But yeah, today we're going to go over route planning. We're going to look at food prep and gear. these are things that we could go in super deep with. My hope is that you're able to just take away resources to start getting out there and getting a little more weathered, but like in a way that's fun and allowing you to learn, not feeling unprepared or sad or angry or hungry or cold. Route planning. 3 main questions that come to mind when I am planning a route. First, I need to decide what activity I'm doing. That's going to really influence where I'm doing the activity. Um, are you all, yeah, what would you all say your primary interest is at the moment in terms of going out? People can just answer freestyle.
My primary activity right now would probably be like snowboarding and then cross country skiing as well.
Awesome. Right on.
Really enjoying the environments, like really immersing myself into it and kind of appreciating what's around.
Okay. So does it matter for you if you're walking or paddling or climbing, just as long as you're able to soak in that space?
Yeah, in the nature space, yeah.
Cool. I love that.
What I'm most interested on is on camping, hiking, canoeing. I mean, those 3 are of my great interest.
Perfect. Thanks. So once you've figured out what activity it is that you're planning this route for, that leads pretty easily, like I mentioned, into that second question of what area are you going to go do this in? And once you've established what area you're going to do it in, you need to understand a little bit about the permitting of that area. So are you entering a park? Are you on public land use? And we'll talk about that a little bit more later on, but some tools that you can use for exploring your area before you're even out there. There are lots of really cool apps out there now. Technology does have a place in the outdoors, believe it or not. And apps are a great way to help set yourself up for success when planning your route. So some of you might be really familiar with these apps already, and just know that I am going to save these slides and send it to you all, so you don't have to sit there and like rigorously like write these down. This is something that you can take away afterwards, and hopefully you'll be able to click on those links or copy and paste them and check out these tools for yourself. But all trails that we have at the top here, this is sorry. Can you all see my little arrow thing?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay. I'm playing with all of the tools today. So All Trails is mostly for established trails. This is all around the world. You can set it up so that it can see your location, and then it'll let you know some of the top hiking trails in that area. It does a really good job of rating them from easy to hard. It lets you know the distance and the time that you might need to do this. I also really like this for just the trail information that it has about the conditions. So if I'm not even going to take that trail, but I'm going to be hiking in that area, I might check out All Trails just to see what other people have noticed about conditions recently and get a bit of an idea of what's happening in that area in terms of the terrain, the weather, yeah, those types of things. Gaia and Topo Canada, they're quite similar in the sense that they give you topo maps of the area that you're going to. Topo Canada, I know you can download the map onto your phone and then you can use that while you're out there. Gaia also has this feature. However, I believe you have to pay extra for the ability to download the map. I have the free version, and the GPS function on it still works for me when I'm out of service. So I won't have the map anymore, but I'll be able to look at my UTM and my elevation by using that app, which is a nice alternative if you don't have the ability to buy a GPS. The only factor with that is you need your phone to be charged. This one down here, Fat Maps. This is a really cool 3D version of these other apps essentially. So you can actually almost like lift the ground up and turn what you're looking at to see the features from different angles. And it allows you to draw out your route the same way, but it just gives you a bit of a different visual than, yeah, the flat topo map visual. Google Earth is kind of similar, the satellite imaging. And you can also turn it into more of a topographic map. Oh, sorry. There we go. And a few more apps. These ones are more for river or if you're doing ocean activities. So the river app tells you about water flows. It doesn't tell you about river put-ins or takeouts or specific rapids. You're going to want to find guidebooks or information online about that, but it will let you know what the water flow is of various rivers, and it will tell you some of the history of that water flow, which can help you track kind of the trends happening in that area. Navionics is kind of, yeah, you're shaking your head there. Sam, you actually might know more about this than I do. What are the pros of Navionics, if you don't mind sharing?
Oh, Navionics is pretty great for like open kind of ocean, or if you're doing any kind of sea kayaking stuff, it would be pretty applicable. It's nice because it gives you live depth updates on like what the tide, where the tide is throughout the day. So it live updates the depths for you. It highlights all kinds of ports, and then highlights all kinds of like, you know, it has all kinds of POIs with like, you know, places that you can resupply, or just, you know, what kind of amenities or useful resources might be in different coastal areas.
That sounds pretty amazing. Do you need to have access to internet while you're using it, or can you?
No. So yeah,
Okay,
you don't need access to internet. As far as I know, it can run off a GPS. And it is like, I think it's a run through Garmin, so it's a Garmin company. And I think you can make it like a whole lot more powerful if you pay for a subscription to it.
Right. Yeah. Perfect. Thanks.
No worries.
Our next slide here is crowd favorites. So I just sent you all a link. iNaturalist, awesome. Okay, so Laura, you are doing exactly what I wanted to encourage people to do. After this, I would like to add what people's favorite apps are to the slideshow, so that when I send it to you, you also have that included, because unfortunately the stuff in our chat won't save or download. So I sent a Google Docs form there that you all could copy and paste your favorite apps into there if you have more that you'd like to add. So maybe I'll give you all a second to add that to there. Laura, do you want to speak to what iNaturalist and Seek are?
Yeah, sure. So they both are similar. With them, you can check everything you want, from plants to animal, what you can find at different areas. So if I find it useful, especially if you are on the field, when you find any specific plant and you want to know if you can eat it or not, or you have seen a specific animal and you want to know anything about it, then you just take a picture and then you just upload it, and they will give you a description of it, or the app is going to GPS your location and give you like an approximate idea of what that animal is all about, and a description of it. The same for plants and everything. So I love it. I love it. And I think iNaturalist is community-based. I think both are community-based. So as you input information, then you just input data. So you help all the community to locate animals, plants, everything. So it's a really cool app. And I think it's Canadian based, funded. I don't know. Like, I don't know as much. Sorry about that, the background, but
No, super
really
cool.
cool.
I have heard of iNaturalist as well. You're basically doing some citizen science type stuff while getting information about what it is that you're looking at. Awesome. Okay, so feel free on this document, you can see that I have a few different sections here. So under apps, if you want to add the name of any more apps that you find really helpful, feel free to do so. No worries if you don't have other ones. Are people having an okay time accessing the document that I shared?
Yeah, I'm on it now. Sorry, I didn't. I wasn't typing in the right place earlier.
No, you're okay. I can puzzle it together afterwards too.
Oops.
Herbert, was that you that put the Avenza? I have not seen that before.
No, I haven't. I also haven't seen that.
Oh, that was me.
Oh, awesome.
It's pretty great. You can kind of add like so I used to work at a nature trust, and we would use it all the time for like boundary monitoring and of nature preserves. And it effectively kind of turns your phone into a GPS, but you can download like really high quality, detailed, almost like government maps on this platform, and it lets you kind of like zoom in and just kind of places you, and you can place points of interest, and you can kind of edit the map or add your own kind of inputs as you go. It allows you to like do a GPS track route. So it's pretty good for kind of like performing GPS functions with your phone.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
GPSs can add up to a lot of money, so it's always nice when we can find apps like that.
Yeah.
I am just going to move forward, but feel free to keep adding to that document as we go. Exploring your area with maps. So sometimes finding maps can be a bit intimidating. If you are in the Rockies, a brand that I love is GemTrek. And you can go to their website and check out if they have stuff in other places as well. Maptown is also a store based in Calgary that you can order to anywhere in Canada, and you can open up their website and just type in like a significant feature or a park. A lot of their maps sometimes end up being road maps, but if you put the park name of where you're trying to go, usually it'll come up with something similar to GemTrek, which what I like about it is it has the topo features and the UTMs, but it also has a lot of rec trails and just other information about points of interest. Some of the more and less traveled routes are on there. So it feels like it just gives me a bit more information than your standard topo map. But if you are going for a very classic topo map, Map World is a one-man show, also based in Calgary. He has a website here. And I put his phone number. His name's Dave. He's my map guy. So I call Dave and I'm like, hey, Dave, I'm trying to figure out what map covers say Touchai Lake. What regions am I going to need? And so he has a whole database, and he looks up like the Canadian government topo maps, and is really helpful with even just like figuring out which maps in that region you might need to puzzle together to do that. An awesome resource. And if he isn't able to send you the map, is at least able to get you that information of, say you need map number 104 M-15, and you can start to find places in your local areas that might have that. And then down here is a link to the Government of Canada Nautical Charts and Services. So this has paper and digital tide tables on it, as well as charts, and more information about currents, as well as different marine services and things like that. Asking around, so calling your local provincial wildlife federation, calling parks, calling the county that the public land use zone is in, even going to registry offices. They're also a place that typically has road maps, but I found this awesome backcountry map for a public land use zone when visiting like the Bighorn County. And so, yeah, you never know, checking in with the registry in the town or the city closest to the area that you're going to, they might have some good information there as well. Does anybody so we got somebody from the West Coast right now. We have somebody in Toronto area. We have somebody in the Maritimes. Do you all have suggestions for how you find maps for your areas? Is that something that you do? Totally okay if you don't typically seek out maps.
Not that I know of. I generally use Google Earth, and that all of these apps are like pretty much completely new to me. And particularly liking Fat Map. I like that one. And also like sometimes like on Google Earth, the advantage is that you can actually draw paths over there, like drawing lines on the map. So like comparing an actual trail map and then comparing it to Google Earth and then trying to trace it, you kind of like are learning it. Like I've tried it once before and it actually works pretty well. So
Nice.
yeah.
Perfect. I would. Oh, sorry. Go for it, Sam.
Yeah, there's so like if you want physical maps, there's a map store that's like specialty for like government maps and marine maps in Halifax. So that's one I know.
Yeah, awesome. And I find even if you don't live close to those stores that have that, you can Google them and just get the information from those stores. Having a hard copy of a map in the field is super important in my mind. Technology is great. It's a great tool, and it also has a lot of points of failure, especially outside with weather or potential like batteries dying, things like that. I find it a lot easier to keep a map like this waterproof and protected. Yeah, just for the areas I'm in. So with that said, take some time to refresh your navigation before you go outside and learn how to use the tools. Use like your compass and your map. The Government of Canada has a few links on this site here to different written resources that are just quick little tidbits on how to use a compass, how to orient a map. As well as the book Freedom of the Hills. This is designed to cover a whole bunch of stuff about mountaineering specifically. However, they have some really sweet chapters just on navigation in general that's transferable to really all of the activities that we're talking about. So if you have the opportunity to take a peek at Freedom of the Hills, even in a library, just to check out the navigation chapters, I would really recommend it. As well, if you are like, I just do not want to sit down and study this, I would way rather do something more interactive. The Association of Canadian Mountain Guides has created this interactive program, and I put a link here that has multiple modules. You don't have to do the whole thing. You can just click on Maps 101 or Whiteout Navigation, and it takes you through a little interactive activity online. It has some quizzes. A different way of learning. Just know that even though this presents itself as a course, you are not going to get a certificate out of doing this. This is just a fun, refresh your tools kind of thing, and you will not be affiliated with the ACMG when you're done doing it. But check it out; it's a lot of fun. All right, finding out your permits and what you need. So again, this is maybe when you're on your hunt for maps, you might come up with this, but typically when you're exploring things on those different apps or on a map, you'll see the outline of the region that you're going to, and you'll see if it's labeled as like a wildlife park or a national park. And that will sort of direct you towards like, okay, I need to Google provincial parks because I'm going into a provincial park, or I need to talk to Parks Canada about getting a park pass or booking designated backcountry spots. A lot of public land use zones, you can go out for the day and use recreationally, no problem. But if you're wanting to wild camp in them, you typically have to do some sort of mini course online about best practice in the outdoors and pay like a tiny little um, fee that covers an entire year. I think it's, at least in Alberta, the public land use zones are $30, and that covers you for the year to wild camp in any sort of public land use or wildlife park. I think there was a hand raised there. Yeah, Sam.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if there's like a website where you I like a website where you can kind of like see where all the crown or public use land is, and what and then like what's privately owned as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. I personally haven't found a site that lays it all out. In Alberta, I have looked up maps of public land use zone, and that will show up all the public land use, but it won't necessarily tell me where the parks are or
Right.
where the private land is. It just like isolates those spots. I do find Gaia really helpful for when I'm looking in that area. It tends to highlight if I'm in a park or a public land use. And then your maps, your paper maps should definitely have that in it. But yeah, open to if there's other people in the room here who have had other experiences looking this up.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry, that probably wasn't the most helpful answer. Yeah, I have to puzzle it together a little bit. I'll look up specifically like where the provincial parks are, where the crown land is, where the so on and so forth is. Google Maps is actually also really good at identifying that. When you're playing around on just your classic Google Maps.
I remember that when I lived in Ontario before, I actually encountered a crown land map of Ontario, and that is actually very useful.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Do you remember how you came across that? Did you just Google it, or
I just Googled it, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah. Google it, and there's like it's a official government site, and it's like an atlas that they call it. And yeah, it works pretty well. Like it does zoom in pretty much. Like the only issue about that is, I guess it's like just the nature of Ontario that much of the crown land is like north of North Bay, because like southern Ontario is mostly farmland, so there's quite a bit of distance, but it's definitely worth looking at.
awesome, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so once we have figured out where we're going, what we're doing, and have ideally looked into permits, we can start to create a route card or a trip description. And this is something that you can bring into the field with you. Something that might help you prepare. Herbert, at the beginning, you were sharing a story of like, I didn't realize how long it was going to be. So when you practice making these cards, you can start to like understand like, oh, how long am I going to be out there for? And that will start to tell you like, what type of equipment do I need to bring? What other information do I need?
Yeah.
So practicing writing out these cards obviously is beneficial just for yourself, but the other reason we create these cards is to leave a copy somewhere with someone. And it needs to be created in a way that that person can pick up that piece of paper and know where you're going, what you were doing, kind of the estimated time of where you're going to be when. That way, if you don't show up on the other end or you've messaged for help, they can understand and like pinpoint whereabouts you might be or narrow down the possibilities.
Yeah. So the hike in question that I did was 25 kilometers. So
That
that's
is
quite a
wild
while.
in one
Yeah.
day. Yeah.
Do you
that's
do that
wild.
much in one day in like the essentials and the foundations part of the journey?
Sorry, you asked if we do that in one day.
Yeah. Do you do that much in
No,
one
I
day
have
in
not done that with an outward bound course, like on personal trips. You might push that, but typically, especially for the training academy, we're wanting to weave in other learnings than just the like objective power through. There are some big days for sure, where we try to make a distance or we try to go up an objective that has like some steeper terrain and takes a bit longer. But yeah, there's other aspects of the day that we weave in there.
Yeah.
that
So
you
sorry,
wanna-
sorry that I'm jumping in for so long. Since I have to leave at 5, I do have a really pressing question that I want to ask before. And
Sure.
yeah, it's that I have already signed up for the Foundations journey in the Rockies for June, and it seems like 4 days is like awfully short to like actually learn that much. So I do want to ask that, since I still know the program very little of that, like after I completed the foundations course, are we allowed to like move into the essentials at a later date, or is that a possibility?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, they're good. It's going to be a 5-day trip,
Yeah.
which you're totally right, is really short and sweet. And the idea is to basically practice implementing what we're talking about here today.
Yeah.
So you're kind of one step ahead just by being here, which is great.
Yeah.
And then the plan is for anybody who participated in the foundations this year, will receive a letter or an email essentially asking if you would like to join
Awesome.
an essentials course in the future.
Awesome.
And there'll be some like navigation as to like what the best fit is, that type of thing.
Yes.
That is the vision at the moment for where this
Yes.
program's headed. This is a new
Yes.
program, but at the moment, this is the direction that it is
Yeah.
headed. And how
That's
that looks
great.
might be different throughout the year, but I believe there's also some whispers about trying to create a program for people who are in the essentials to receive more resources, whether that's webinar
Yeah.
circles or the opportunity to do more learning in person as well. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, super excited. You're coming out to the Rockies. I'll see you there.
Yes, for sure.
Great. Just gonna swing it back to the route and description plan. And Herbert, no problem if you need to sneak out at some point. Feel free to just leave when you need to. Appreciate you showing up for the time that you could. So a route and description, or the acronym you could use for this, is a RAD plan. What type of information do you think is important to have in this? Feel free to popcorn out there.
Route description.
These pictures are hiding the answer. I'm gonna move the pictures in a second.
Weather,
Difficulty of terrain.
Yeah, awesome.
the weather,
Cool. You bet weather is helpful.
Access to drinking water.
Nice.
Checking for any special conditions, for instance, any closures, any like more extreme things like avalanches or like other natural hazards.
For sure.
Yeah.
wildlife.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What about
wildlife.
information that's going to help someone know where you are and what you're doing?
Do you mean like I I'm not sure what you mean.
No problem. It is the evening and you all came here to learn, so I will not like make you try and guess all night. I can just share the information that I'm talking about. So a route and description plan would have this type of information on it. It would be pretty short and sweet. This isn't like a giant document that you need to create. It's just kind of one sheet of paper that has the date that you're planning on traveling. It has the starting location and the ending location. I use UTM coordinates to be the most specific, but I'll also maybe underneath that UTM coordinate put something like the trailhead or the like a significant feature in the area, just to help people find where that point is. And then I'm going to note like what the elevation gain and loss is between those two places. So I just have an understanding of like, are we going to be going uphill for a long time? Are we going to be going downhill? I will figure out the distance of that. And then these two things together, the distance that I'm going that day and the elevation gain and the elevation loss, as well as notes about the trail, whether or not it's on trail or off trail, or if there's certain weather conditions, things like that. I will use that information to try and come up with how long will this probably take me to do. Typically, the average person will walk 4 kilometers an hour just on a flat pavement with no backpack or any other gear. So if I have gear and the trail's got a bit of elevation, for every like 300 meters, I'm adding about an hour of time. That's going to slow me down. And I also do that for elevation loss because going downhill, depending on the terrain, can have some significant features on it that can make it challenging. And I'll want to include that in my timing. Other things that I might consider is if it's on trail or off trail, and I'll probably add more time if it's off trail. And you all nailed it with the kind of notes or the description of the route piece. So after just this little like bullet point of like where I'm going, how long it's going to take me, I'll have a note about things like weather or alternative routes that I might need to take or significant wildlife things happening in the area. Say there was like a lot of bear sightings, I might choose an alternative route. Describing the route is slightly different than naming the hazards and noteworthy things. So noteworthy, I would also put things like where my water source is, where are my potential campgrounds. Those would fall under noteworthy. Description of the route would be more like I will be walking west along the south ridge of Moose Mountain. And notice that I'm not using left and rights. I'm not saying, okay, we're starting at this trailhead and we're going to turn right at the trailhead and keep walking until we get to the big rock and then we'll like turn left. I would say something along the lines of like starting at this UTM, the trailhead name is this, walking north towards this feature. And when I reach that feature, we'll probably turn in a more easterly direction, like something like that. Just helps any sort of confusion when someone's reading about the description of where you are, helps prevent that confusion. Any questions about the information that you're putting on a route card? I'm about to show you some images that show how different ways you can lay this out. So this is a really simple table that you can copy by hand just into a notebook or a logbook that you might be bringing into the field. Or you can print these off of, oh my gosh, words. You can print these offline as well. So yeah, it has this has laid it out with not a lot of room for notes. but it's just on the side here, you can have a little description of, again, sort of that direction that you're headed. If you're traversing, if you're going up, if you're going down, that type of thing, a quick little description. The grid references, so those like UTM starting and ending locations. What it means by the bearing is the direction that you're headed. So bearing would be like north, northwest, or if you are using a compass and you actually have a number bearing that you're following, you would put that number bearing. So I'd say I'm going north 180 degrees. The distance, elevation gain, terrain and hazards. This is where you'd plug in those pieces about weather, or animals or other terrain features. Maybe one little note that I'll say about weather. For short trips and for the first few days of your trip, it is so awesome to get weather. Oh my gosh, my brain just stopped working for a second. To get weather forecasts. I was about to be like that thing that tells you the future about the weather. We were about to play charades for a second. Okay, weather forecasts are helpful for sure, especially like if you're just out for a day. You can really plan and prepare for that specific type of weather. And then the first few days of a longer trip, knowing what the weather is, can really help you define maybe how you start that trip. If the weather is really bad the first few days of a trip, you might make more conservative choices than if it's awesome. Once you get past those first couple days and you are out on a long trip, there is this point of acceptance of like the weather is just going to be what the weather is going to be. And we are bringing gear out with us to be prepared for any type of weather. And that's when you want to start exploring skills like, what do the clouds in the sky mean right now? How much buildup is there? What direction is the wind moving? What does the air temperature feel like? Do I notice the sky and the wind and the air temperature changing throughout the day? And making little notes of that in your journal while you're out there, you'll start to actually be able to notice trends and make your own little forecasts regarding weather while you're out there, and using that to inform your decisions. Feels really cool once you start to practice it a bit more. So that's maybe just some food for thought if you're out on a longer trip. Start to familiarize yourself with what different clouds mean. Take note of wind directions and take note of like how the temperature feels on your skin. So this is very blurry picture of how all of this information was written into someone's logbook. What I mean by logbook is just like a tiny little notebook that you can bring out with you on your trips. And you can, instead of printing off that previous picture that I showed you, you can write it right into your book. This is what Outward Bound instructors at the Rocky branch would fill out before we head into the field. We would have a whole bunch of days on there. And we would leave this copy at the office. And that just means somebody can pick that up and know where we're supposed to be on that day and what exactly we were doing. This is a copy from a sea kayaking logbook that I have. And the reason I put this up here is just to sort of keep in the back of your mind, if you're doing a different activity other than hiking, that you're probably going to add a few more features to your route card. You're going to want information about tides and currents, maybe a bit more information about sunrise and sunset. Same with river trips, just knowing about potential precipitation, if you have to be worried about flash flooding, things like the water levels, significant rapids. You might create a special space for writing significant portages down, and you might even go in more of a hiking mode for those portages and talk about like the starting UTM and the direction and the terrain that you're going to be hiking over, those types of things. Okay, let's try and work this. So we will do this activity all together. At one point, I was going to have us in breakout groups, but might as well stick together. We're a little group already. How comfortable are you two looking at maps? And I'm happy to support this process if you're not super comfortable.
I think I'm pretty comfortable.
Okay. Are you all able to see the first picture that I sent before we let people into the waiting room? I sent this when it was just Brandon and I. So if you look at the chat, is there a picture at the top of it, or does that not show up?
No,
Just
Okay.
like
Okay.
not for me.
No problem. I will resend it. So I'm going to send you a picture of a map as well as the legend of the map so that you can know what the contour lines mean. And we're going to practice making a little route card. All right, are you able to view those images now?
I'm on that now.
Ooh.
yeah, I can see them.
Perfect. And
Okay,
can you also see me sharing the map as well?
yes, I can see that
Okay.
too.
You can follow along on whatever's easier for you, if it's the picture of the map or what I have shared here. Let's create a route card. So let's pretend our starting date is tomorrow. And maybe grab a piece of paper or pen and somebody can track this. I'm gonna try and track it on here. Where on this map for a 2-day, 1-night trip would you all like to go? You can pick anywhere. We'll pick a starting UTM and we'll pick the UTM of the first leg of our trip, maybe either to where we're having lunch or to where we're planning on sleeping.
So where are we starting?
Yeah,
Whatever.
you all can decide anywhere on this map, just letting me know. Are you familiar with finding the UTM on a map?
Not me.
Okay, no problem.
Well, the UTM is like the it's like what box you're in, right? So you're in like maybe 43 and 35 or something like that.
Totally, yeah. So if you can see my arrow, you use these numbers on the bottom and on the side to identify where you are, kind of like on a grid. So let's say we have been traveling for a few days and we're gonna start at this spot here. I'll go down to the bottom and I see the number 42 here.
Mhm.
So I know that we're in box number 42, and between 42 and 43, I'm gonna imagine that there's 10 little ticks that evenly are spaced apart from each other. And I'm gonna go back up to this dot and I'm just gonna look, that's maybe like 3 ticks over from the 42 line. So the first number in my UTM would be 42.3. And then the second number that's going to let people know that I'm at this black dot here is on the side. So I'm going to look, we are in between 38 and 39. So 38, and I'll imagine 10 little ticks between 38 and
Like
39.
around 8 or 9.
Yeah, we're probably like, yeah, 8 or 9. Let's go 8. So the second number will be 38, 8.
Okay, so so what the coordinate we input is 42.3, 38.8, and
Yes.
38.8.
And it's super tempting to put a decimal and say point. We just don't do that in UTMs. We just like remove the
Okay.
decimal and just you would read it out as
42,
42,
3, and
10,
38, 9.
38, 9, or 8, whatever you chose there. Yeah, awesome.
Okay.
Cool. So that is our starting UTM. I'll put a little star there. Let's say we are going to camp. Yeah, around here. It's pretty random. It looks pretty steep in there. We probably actually wouldn't camp there, but that's okay. This is all just for fun. What would our ending UTM be? And you two can both take a second to go with that.
So we're the location where we're going to go.
Yeah,
So that would be 41.
Do you want to come visit me in Paris?
8.
Yeah, I
nice.
heard you.
And 36. 7.
Yeah, awesome.
What?
Okay, so we've identified where we started, where we're gonna end. These blue squares represent a kilometer by a kilometer. So if you cross an entire square, you've gone about a kilometer. So that helps us with distance. So if I'm going from here to here, it's not quite a kilometer. It's maybe like
800.
0.7 of a kilometer. And then if I go down this way, I can kind of imagine that that's like maybe another kilometer. There is a bend in it. If I'm trying to figure out bends, I might take a string. Let's say this line here is a string. I would take this string and I'd hold it up between the 2 points and I would put a bend in there, and then I would straighten that string out and I'd hold it up to the side of the map and I'd see how many blue squares that string goes across. We can't do that, unfortunately, on the computer, but I can kind of imagine that if I straightened this red line out that I just created, there'd probably be about 2 and a bit kilometers. So maybe I'll put 2.5 kilometers as the distance that we're going. I won't get you all to try and like count all the tiny little contour lines on there, but those squiggly lines, these brown squiggly lines here, represent elevation. So if we were to walk on this brown squiggly line, we would stay at the same height the whole time. But if we go across multiple lines, we're either going up or down. Do you all know by looking at this map if we're headed up or down by any chance on the route that we are currently doing, if we're starting here and ending here?
I think we're going down and then up.
I think well, I think that we're down by the water as well, and I think water is usually in a lower area. So I would say up, and then kind of peeking out, and then down.
Yeah, totally. We're going up actually the entire time in this one. Yeah, it can be a little confusing. So this here, it's hard to see, but this is like a circle, and that is the highest point. And coming down from there, it's kind of, if you were looking at it, it would look like a rock wall almost. and then from there, you're following a drainage down, 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 and this is like the big valley bottom here. So we're starting pretty low in the valley bottom, and you're gradually working your way up. So we're going up, we're following this dotted line here represents, what do y'all think that represents?
A trail.
Yeah, totally. Typically the dotted lines are trails that are narrower, they're maybe a little more rugged, a little more bumpy. If you have a really solid black line, that's usually a pretty established wide trail. So this might be a bit of a bumpy trail, and then we're going to go off trail following this. So there's a bit of trail, off trail things happening. We're going 2 and a bit kilometers, and we're going uphill the whole time. How long do you think it'll take us to hike up there to camp for the night?
How long?
Yeah, if let's say we all could walk 4 kilometers in an hour, and this does not need to be accurate. Don't feel like this is like a physics test, like just a rough estimate of how long you think that would take.
Maybe 4 hours or so.
Yeah,
Maybe like
totally.
4 or 5 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's not that far of a distance, but it's a lot of uphill. There's a bit of off trail. Giving ourselves lots of wiggle room there. Okay, so we've talked about where we're starting, where we're gonna end, how long we think it's gonna take. We've talked about the distance. We typically would put a bit more of an accurate number of elevation gain and loss, but we'll just say we're gaining a lot of elevation. What other information do we need on our route card?
I believe she might be able to help. Sleep down the top bridge. That's right. Let's find something besides.
Elevation.
We kind of talked about that a little bit already, just that we are headed uphill. We would count all these little squiggly lines to calculate how far uphill we're going, but we're not going to do that just for the sake of this activity right now because it's hard to see on the screen.
Would you need a rally point or an evacuation point?
You can definitely have that as part of your plan. Yeah, so you could just put a little note of where the closest pickup or the easiest exit would be, for sure. In this instant, what do you think that would be?
Probably the trail fork back down within the park.
Yeah, for sure. And it looks like we don't have the whole map, but it looks like you could just ride this trail all the way out, probably to a pickup point. We would need the other map to know that for sure. So that's definitely a helpful, noteworthy thing to have. I might note that where the closest water source is, our star there is right beside a little drainage. Other noteworthy things would just be, yeah, part of our journey is going to be on trail and part of it's off trail. I would describe us as walking south for about 1 kilometer, and then at the confluence of the 2 drainages, we're veering southwest. Awesome. Does creating the route card feel good for both of you? Do you have any questions about that? I'll probably just bring us back to the other slideshow.
Makes me more confident, honestly, to do this exercise.
Perfect. Yeah, definitely practice lots. Even if you're just going out for a day trip, practice like writing those things down and just making note of them.
Would you
It'll for
do
sure
you
help you in
have
the long run.
like emergency contacts on a route card as well? Or
Yeah. Yeah, I would, in my logbook, I would probably right at the beginning have a list of my emergency contacts, just in general. That's usually how I like to organize it. I might have a little section that's dedicated just to weather. I might write down all the weather that's possibly going to happen that I can predict while I'm still close to internet resources. And then I would start to have my next few pages be the route plan, and I would have information like what we just went over. And I'd save a little space at the bottom for just writing about the day each night of like, okay, this was the route plan that we made. And then in my notes at the bottom, I might say, these are the things that actually happened. This was the weather that I noticed. And then if I'm out on a really long trip, I'm going to have multiple days that I can look back at and start to see the trends of what's happening. If I'm working with a program, I would also track any type of thing that's happening with my participants, and just note that just in case it comes up later on, how we were caring for that and what kind of support they needed. Or maybe I get to day 5 of a trip and I look back and I'm like, wow, this person is still having digestive problems and it's 5 days in. We actually might need to start looking at this less of like a how do we make them more comfortable, how do we support them, and more as like they might need
Mhm.
extra support than what
Primary
I can
attention.
provide. Yeah. Great questions. I just want to recognize that we have been going for a long time. Do you all want to take 5 minutes to just stretch? And we'll come back and speak a little more to, oh, sorry, I need to do new share. Let's go back to this. Yeah, and we'll come back and kind of jump more into food and gear things.
Cool.
Awesome. So I'll see you all in 5 minutes.
Okay. Awesome so far.
Great. Glad it's helpful.
Much. Relax. Whose car is here?
Which country?
I know.
Is it?
I wasn't sure. Man, we went to fucking Wafers. We walked Wafers on the
Wafers.
dikes,
Oh yeah.
and there's open mic. So I got up.
Okay, welcome back.
Really fair for you to ask your way and not.
Awesome. So this was our little midway pep talk. Y'all are doing great. Thanks for being here.
Great.
We are going to talk about food. It's all about the picnic. This is something that a good friend of mine who's also an Outward Bound instructor likes to say. And honestly, it's like the nicest little mantra to have in the back of your mind when things are feeling a little hard out there of, oh yeah, we're just on a really epic picnic right now. Our whole goal is to eat some good food with good people in awesome places. I'm going to do just a quick little overview of backcountry nutrition, just to give you some information so that when you are trying to decide what food you want to bring out with you on a trip, this might inform your decisions a little bit, but we're not going to go super deep. Again, this is one of those topics that you could dive into a whole lot and Google things about food for endurance activities and probably go down many, many rabbit holes, but we'll just surface level it. The obvious. I think we all know this about food based off of our lived experiences. Food gives us energy, nutrients, all those things that we need in order to function and maintain good health. Some of the less obvious stuff. When we're living outside, if we're out for multiple days at a time, or even just for a day, our body is expending a ton of energy all the time. Even when we're sleeping. So think about sleeping outside and it's a little cooler and your body has to thermoregulate itself. It's working hard to do that versus being inside a house where the house is regulating that temperature for you. Temperature and movement are super related to the amount of energy our body's using. Oh, whoops. How do I get back here? Okay, well, going back. Here we go. Calories. Think about calories more as like the amount of energy you can pull from your food than anything else when you're looking at that. That becomes more relevant when people start to think about how heavy is this food, and then they look at the nutritional facts and they're like, oh, I don't actually get like a ton of nutritional value or a ton of calories for how heavy this food is. Lots of folks will start to think about this is really light food and it seems to have a lot of calories in it to keep me going. So it has a lot of energy that I can pull from it. Carbs, carbohydrate. Yeah.
Are you sharing your screen with like the slideshow right now?
I am, yeah.
Because
Or I should have been.
I think it's on your window that is currently open to the picture of the map.
Oh, to the map still. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
How is that? Is
That
this
looks great.
It's on the possibly less obvious slide?
Yeah.
Great. Love it. Okay. So So carbs, this is like pasta, rice, potatoes, fruits and vegetables. This is the type of food that our body is gonna primarily pull energy from. It can break it down really quickly and turn it into something useful. So having that all throughout the day is important. Proteins, our body takes pieces of the food and they turn it into proteins and uses it more long term. Takes longer to do that process, to access that energy, and it uses it more for restoring your muscle tissues, your bones, things like that. So it's important during the day, but also important to have some sort of protein kind of after you're doing the most active part of your day. And then fats, these are really cool energy stores that keep us going for a long time. So also having a combo of fats throughout your day is great, but fats get burned when we're actually doing less energy intense things like sleeping. So consider before going to bed having like a big spoonful of peanut butter. That will actually keep you warmer throughout the night. Your body's going to like slow burn that throughout the night. Yeah, and probably feel a bit warmer. Sugar, question mark. I think fats and sugars are like a big taboo in the world out there. When you're in the backcountry, that your body just uses this stuff differently. So like I said before, fats are actually like our friends. They're long burning, keep us warm overnight. Sugar, it is a carbohydrate, so it's a really easy source of energy for our body. And we use it super quickly. So just keeping in mind that sugar is not necessarily a bad thing, but if you're having just candy or chocolate or something like that, and you don't have any other more complex food with proteins and fats in it, you are going to feel a bit of a crash. But something with a bit of sugar in it to just get that boost, like especially you arrive at camp and you need to get a lot of work done and you're tired because you just did a bunch of active stuff all day. A little bit of sugar, great time for the sugar. Gatorade and lemonade powder. This can really be your friend throughout the day, or any sort of juice powder that has actual real sugar in it. It'll help you hydrate as well as give you just a little boost of energy as you're going and maintain that steady flow of energy. Other nutrients is, all right, vitamins, minerals, fibers. People get really nervous that they're not going to have enough vitamins and minerals in the backcountry. Most of the food that you bring out there does have it in it, but adding nuts, seeds, grains, legumes, dried fruit, dried veg, those are kind of the ways that you add vitamins to your diet. And the whole intention of that is not necessarily to add energy, but it is to a way that your body can use different materials to function properly. If you're on a longer term trip, you might want to bring multivitamins, or those drink supplements like Emergency, or there's some super green drink mixes, as kind of like an insurance to make sure that you are getting enough vitamins. But typically, you can get all that you need just by adding seeds and dried fruit and dried veg. Do either of you have favorite supplements or snacks that you bring along on trip or for an activity?
I really like fruit leather on trips.
Yeah, awesome.
Like the fruit to go fruit leather bars, those are great.
Yeah, those are so good. Definitely a good source of kind of like a sugary energy, as well as you're like, I think I got a few vitamins out of this. Not gonna have scurvy today. And I just wanted to put a slide all on its own, just talking about water. Water is so important, and we typically don't get enough water when we're in the backcountry. Part of it is we have to work hard for it. You do need to plan to sanitize your water, boiling it, bringing a filter, using water tabs. They're all great ways to sanitize your water. And you need it. You need it all day. That food that you're eating eventually isn't going to serve you at all. Your body won't be able to absorb that nutrients without water. Thoughts, questions regarding water?
Have you used Pristine before?
Yes.
And is it like I guess if you're doing like long trips, do you find like Pristine starts like having adverse effects, or like, you know, makes your gut kind of feel sort of rotten a little bit?
I've been around people who have had really sensitive guts who they related it back to using the tablets.
Yeah.
So there can be some sensitivity. So it is a good idea if that is what you're planning on using as your method of sanitization. Maybe practice on a shorter trip or just a day hike or something like that. First, a filter is a really good alternative to that. And there's different types of water tablets. There's also the I forget the brand name, but you'll have to do a little bit of chemistry while you're out there. You mix the droplets.
Yeah, that's
Or that
Pristine.
is the Pristine. Yeah, the water
The
droplets.
A and the B.
Yes, mixing those together. So yeah, I have been around people who found that they were a bit sensitive to it, but also typically if it might, like, maybe making sure that you're not over dropleting. It can be a
Yeah.
little sneaky, like sometimes that you squeeze out a little more than you thought. Somebody actually shared with me on a trip recently that with the Pristine water tablets, the time is actually what makes the difference. So if you cut it in half, if you did 3 and 3 instead of 5 and 5, and you left it for twice the length of time that it's supposed to sanitize it, like continue sanitizing it during that length of time. Yeah, I think 5 is like the recommended, 5 or 7 or something like that is the recommended dose to be able to drink your water within, I think it's 30 minutes. But if you're willing to wait a bit longer, you could play around with doing a bit less of the droplets. Okay, factors of food planning. So how I'm deciding what food to bring. Part of it is that information that we just talked about of like, okay, I need to keep my body fueled, but I'm gonna consider the weight of the food. And depending on the activity I'm doing, maybe the weight doesn't matter that much. Maybe it's boat supported. Maybe it's vehicle supported. I'm going to consider my metabolism. So just knowing myself a little bit of, do I get hungry frequently throughout the day? That's one factor of metabolism. The other factor of metabolism that people don't always think about is if I'm outside for a long time, by the end of my first week, my body's probably going to be needing more calories than what I do on my average, just day to day living, not on trip. So that second week, I might want to account for adding a little more food to that second week of food, or yeah, that second week. And then so on, like for my third week, I'm going to probably want to have more calories in my third week. I also would consider weather closely related to that. If it's winter time, I'm going to be burning a ton of energy. And so even if I'm not somebody who gets hungry a ton back home, I might be hungry all the time, just trying to keep up with staying warm. If it's really hot, I would also consider that. I still really need to eat. That can be a little tricky when it's hot. Sometimes people are like, oh, it's just so hot, I don't want to eat. You do need to eat to like sustain yourself and have that energy for being active. But you might consider packing a little less food. Food preferences and needs obviously are important, depending on who you're going out with. And then the desired backcountry cooking experience. Maybe you don't care about what you're eating out there. You just need the food to give you the energy to do the thing, there's tons of options for light weight food that packs a lot of calories in. But maybe you're really excited about baking in the backcountry or cooking and getting a little more creative and just creating a different type of cooking experience. So that will also change what type of food and what type of gear you're bringing.
I'm always afraid of that, of the cooking, because of you might attract wild animals just to you. And maybe keeping your food safe might be more difficult if you could. I don't know. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't think the type of food that I eat necessarily influences the risk of wildlife. It's all the other things that I do. So am I setting up my kitchen somewhere that's far away from where I'm sleeping? That is like my number one prevention. And then all the food, whether or not it's more complicated food or simpler food, I'm going to want to have some sort of system for keeping it safe at night and keeping it away from animals. And then while I'm cooking, regardless of whatever it is, just taking note that I'm not spilling things everywhere. And if I do, just picking it up and putting it in a bag's usually fine. Yeah, I haven't noticed an increase in wildlife activity based on what food I'm bringing. It's more on whether or not I'm doing the best practices while cooking. So if I have the ability to bring a heavyweight meal plan with me, that means I'm probably have some sort of support in transporting that food, like a boat or a vehicle. And this means I can probably bring more fresh stuff. Things that last really well are like root vegetables, so carrots, beets, onions, cabbage, peppers. I could bring canned products typically. If I have the ability to bring a cooler, I might consider bringing some frozen meats, eggs, or dairy products. And a lot of my meals will feel similar to cooking at home. This is just an example of a heavyweight plan. So you just see that like there's a lot more ingredients involved, a lot more fresh ingredients. And then on the other extreme end, lightweight, like people that are through hiking, they're trying to keep their pack super, super tiny. They're going to start probably looking at, okay, how many grams does this piece of food weigh? And like, how much energy am I pulling from it? You'll probably have a lot more dry ingredients. You'll have more powdered things with you. Yeah, you can find individual dry ingredients and create a meal with that, or you can find a lot of prepackaged meals that have been dehydrated or freeze dried. The difference between dehydrated and freeze dried, dehydrated is like it was all like sucked out over the span of time and you need to rehydrate it with water. Freeze dried is like this process of just like a really quick, it's dry afterwards, but it's like frozen so quickly that it's just dry. And you have to rehydrate it as well, but it takes a lot less time to rehydrate. So just keeping that in mind, both are great, both make the food really light. Just dehydrated usually takes a lot longer to rehydrate, and you might want to soak it for a little while before you start cooking and boiling it. Whereas freeze dried, you can usually just pour boiled water over it and it'll soak it up and be ready in a few minutes. Yeah, soup mixes are amazing. These are really light. They have some salts and vitamins and stuff in them, but they hydrate you at the same time because you're having water in your soup. That is maybe the key thing with these lightweight meals, is because you've sucked all the water out of them to be able to make them light. They dehydrate you really easily if you don't put enough water in it. So drinking tons of water if you're doing this type of meal plan. These meals also require you to know a little more about how to use them. They're not typically ingredients that you might use in your day-to-day life. So just spending some time playing around with it a bit more. And then we have this kind of like, Oh, sorry, I have a little menu here too. This one I didn't break down into a table because the ingredients are pretty much in the name, like just having some oats and then snacks throughout the day, and then some sort of pre-made meal at night. Medium weight. So uh, if I don't have boat or vehicle support, but I have a lot of re-rations, or I don't mind carrying the food, or I want to try specific type of backcountry cooking, um, I'm going to add some extra ingredients, and it's going to be a little heavier, but maybe just worth it for the experience that I'm having. So I'm still avoiding things like cans and cabbages and like big meaty things that are super heavy and super fresh, but I might add some things like flours. Cheese and cured meats actually last a really long time in the backcountry, like usually a week. So if I know that I'm going to get a food drop in a week from now, I would consider bringing some cheese and meat just to make my life a little more tasty. I might bring something like peanut butter or butter. I might bring a more elaborate spice kit. So tiny little bottles with different spices that I want to add to meals while cooking. I might bring some bread like stuff like tortillas. I usually, for myself personally, veer away from bagels and loaves of bread. Some people bring that. I just find it awkward to carry and pack, and tortillas already smushed down, so might as well. This is an example of a menu that might be kind of the in-between hybrid. So for example, if I want to bake cinnamon buns over the fire, that might be one of those backcountry cooking experiences that I plan for, that looks different than a lightweight meal plan. I'm going to bring flour and like a few extra ingredients to make something like that. And then the rest of my meals on here are pretty light and pretty similar to the lightweight meal plan. I have, like, instead of tomato paste, I have like a powdered tomato paste. Instead of milk, I have a powdered milk. You can find a lot of those powdered things online quite easily, but also in camping stores as well, or bulk food stores. Lunch, this tends to be a point of contention, not really contention, but it comes up as a question a lot for some reason. Do you have lunch while you're out on an expedition or a longer trip? And the answer is it just depends on what you want, like what you want your experience to be. It's your picnic. If I'm trying to keep it a bit lighter, I know I can get the vitamins and energy that I need from just having snacks like beef jerky and granola bars and trail mixes and dried fruits throughout the day. But if I want to have that experience of enjoying an actual meal in the middle of the day, I might plan to bring things like tortillas and stuff for making a wrap at lunchtime. Okay, you might hear the word pantry and meal plan, especially if you start working in the outdoor industry. Your program might choose to do a pantry style food system. What this means is you're going to get just a whole schwack of ingredients that you get to decide whatever you want to do. And in programs that use this type of model, they've usually weighed out the ingredients of, like, okay, you have a pound of flour, that is a couple baking meals. You have 2 pounds of pasta, that's like a few dishes. So you just have to start to get to know how much of each ingredient you're using per meal. Sometimes people find it a little hard at first or they feel some fear around, am I using too much of this ingredient? Just know that it usually always works out. It gives you the opportunity to create these kind of weird, funky dishes sometimes. But it can feel a bit intimidating to figure out how much of each ingredient you're bringing. But it is nice because there's less planning involved. It's like, we're just going to take this and we're going to make it work with us. The meal plan, I see a lot of people trend towards the meal plan as like a safety net or a safer route. People get food stressed in the backcountry. That's just a reality. If you are supporting people as a leader in the outdoors or a facilitator, and they've spent no time in the outdoors, you might notice that using a meal plan provides just enough structure that helps your participants feel like a little more secure in what they're doing while learning. And so basically what that looks like is like those menus that I just shared with you. You already know we're using these ingredients for this meal on this day. And it works. You do typically have to stick more or less to that plan. And sometimes you have days where you're really cold and you end up eating more. And then the next day you have like a little less to make that thing that you were going to make. There's a little less leeway for that. Whereas with the pantry plan, you can play around a bit more while you're in the field and adapt to what you're feeling that day based on what's happening, what the activity you're doing, what the weather's like. It's also nice to be able to look up recipes in advance, I guess, for a meal plan. Awesome. I already talked a little bit about the difference between freeze-dried and dehydrated food. There's tons of awesome stuff out there. Just know that this can be hard on some people's stomachs. Usually it's hard on people's stomachs because they're not drinking enough water. But yeah, test it out, try different meals while on shorter trips and then see if it works for you. I'm putting a little plug out here for a friend who recently started a dehydrated food company that's all home cooked meals with cycled up products. So they've gone to different grocery stores and gotten food that was potentially going to go in the trash and turned it into like a really delicious home cooked meal and dehydrated it. And I find that they don't bother my stomach the same way some of the other like mass produced brands affect me. Any favorites out there? Any favorite meals that you all have had? This can be brands or this can be like meals that you've chosen to have.
I really like curries. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
What do you
curries.
like about them?
They're kind of like warm and just kind of stick to your ribs, but then it's an easy way to introduce a bunch of freeze-dried vegetables too. And the spice is kind of nice to have.
Yeah.
It's nice to have, like, you eat a lot of kind of blander things, so to have some to have some heat is kind of nice.
Yes, agreed.
I don't cook outside. I just bring a lot of energy bars, dried meats, tuna, everything that is can packed. And yeah, I'm not at that level, not yet.
That's
Of
fair.
bringing the whole thing.
That is fair. I'm excited for you to play around with it a bit more. Do you think you'll try some stuff or do you want to go out with people to learn a bit more?
I think I want to go with more people just to learn about it and people who have done it before.
Yeah,
just to get a sense of it, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it definitely takes some practice. Your question earlier kind of brings us to this slide here about leave no trace considerations. So what I mean by that is just our impact on the space that we're cooking in, making sure that you're packing out all of the garbage from your food that you're bringing in. You might want to remove extra packaging in advance if there's a box or something on the material you're bringing. Burning extra food is a little bit taboo. I usually go by the strategy of if I'm having a rest day and that fire is going pretty much all day, and I know that whatever I'm putting in that fire, like that little bit of leftover of rice or something, is going to be fully turned into ash. And when I scatter that ash, it's going to just not have any sort of trace of itself. I will do that. But if not, I'm usually packing leftovers out. or at least packing them every couple days to when we have a rest day with a fire. Food storage is your other big consideration. Yeah, Laura, your question earlier about animals. So storing your food at night, doing some sort of hang, you put all your food in something and hang it up.
That's what I have done. That's what I have done before.
Perfect. Yeah,
yeah.
that's great. That's awesome. River trips might use a barrel or something to seal their food off. Yeah. Okay, these are just some YouTube videos for learning about dehydrating your food yourself. If you want to make meals throughout the year and make a little extra and dehydrate it, that can be a fun strategy. We are starting to run out of time, but I'm going to go through gear here and it probably won't take too long. Most of the information's on the slides that I want to talk about. So when I send it to you, you can refer back to the slides. But I like to break down gear into the personal gear I'm bringing, the group gear if I'm leading a trip, or going with a group of people, and then gear that's instructor specific if I'm leading that trip. So this is a personal list. Again, you'll get this slide so you can look at it. And then group gear really depends on the type of trip I'm doing. But thinking about things like more like my kitchen stuff, my shelters, those types of things. How we're going to wash our hands, how we're going to collect water if we need water. And then the stove and fuel. I'll just speak quickly to different types of stoves you might see out there. So this is a 2-burner stove. This is something that you're not walking with usually. You're throwing that in a boat. They're pretty great, but they're kind of heavier. And then on the other end, you have little kind of pocket rockets that have these little butane cans. The advantages are that these are lightweight. The disadvantages are the butane cans can be hard to tell how much is still in there. And a lot of the heat gets dispersed. It works a little less well in cold weather. A little less efficient in cold weather, and the stove itself can be a bit hard to take apart and fix if you're on a longer trip. So I use those usually on a short trip that I'm just trying to go light. And then on a longer trip, I use something like this. This is called a whisper light. And the fuel bottles, I can measure out how much liquid fuel I'm putting in, and the bottles that I'm filling up are refillable. So it's a little less waste. And I've just taken the time to learn how to take these pieces apart and fix it while it's in the field. A lot of them come with user guides that are really helpful. Things to consider if you are instructing or leading. So you're probably going to have extra paperwork. You have like logbook things. You're going to have some sort of way of waterproofing it. Here, I have a little prop behind me, some sort of plasticky type envelope to waterproof any paperwork you want to bring. You'll probably have a more advanced first aid kit or drug kit, emergency devices. These are all things that will probably be unique to each program that you find yourself spending time with. Yeah, but just knowing that yourself as an instructor, you might be required to carry a few extra gadgets. Renting and finding used gear. Gear can be expensive and can be intimidating to find it. Looking up at universities in your area, a lot of universities have outdoor programs and they rent gear out. A lot of outdoor education programs, camps, guiding outfitters will sell their gear every couple of years. So asking them if they're doing a sale anytime soon, looking for gear swaps on Facebook, Marketplace. Consignment stores are usually places you can bring your old gear and sell it there. And then you get some sort of store credit and you can buy different gear at that store. Some gear is really worth investing in off the bat.
And I have to get going, but
Yeah.
thank you so much for your presentation. It was really good.
Yeah, of course. We are wrapping up. The only last thing that I have is just a little piece about how you're getting to where you're going and where you're leaving. So I guess, sorry, my recommendation for you is if you have to jump out, just taking a peek at this slide with this card on it, that would be the extra piece of information that you would want to add to a trip plan to leave behind with someone of like, hey, are you able to drop the food off here at this point? This is one way that you can capture that information and make sure those little details happen in the background. But thank you so much for coming. So excited that you're going to have some future adventures ahead of you, whether it's with Outward Bound or with the CCC or teaching.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And yeah, you guys put on a really good workshop here. So thank you.
It's a lot of information. So yeah, sit with it. Feel free to reach out and ask questions. And hopefully you'll have some time to check out the info later.
Okay.
Cool.
Thanks.
Take care.
And I have to say the same, Natalie. I
Yeah.
have to go.
Awesome.
Yeah, but thank you so much. I really enjoyed this presentation. So much information. That's so helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Like I said, we'll shoot the slides your way so you can look at it at your own time. This was pretty much all of the info I had to offer anyways. Yeah.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you. I learned so much, so much. And I really like the map activity. Loved
Perfect.
it. I felt like we were doing it, like we were on a trip.
You're going for it.
Yeah.
Laura, I didn't catch at the beginning. Are you participating in one of the training academy programs?
Yeah, I am.
Awesome.
Yeah. I'm already done with the first part. I did
Okay.
it last year, and now we're going to do the trip experience, the outdoor experience.
Great.
Probably June or April. I don't know which one it is going to be, but one of those.
Okay, that's so exciting.
Yeah, I'm so
Have fun.
excited. Yeah, thank you. All this is for sure going to be on my pocket.
Yes.
So thank you so much for bringing all this up.
No
And
worries.
you know, many of my friends from the professional training, they were like just sending messages right now, like, hey, do you remember when you said the webinar? And like, well, I am in it right now. No. So, you know, having these twice, you know, might be helpful for, you know, those who couldn't make it. And it's so interesting. I would just recommend it to anyone. Having
Great.
it at another time, I think that would be great.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we will have the recording available for folks.
Oh yeah,
and
you're right.
It'll be sent your way so you can maybe forward it along to the people that couldn't make it, and they can take a peek at the slides and look at the recording to kind of get the info that goes with the slides, and they'll have it at their fingertips anytime that works for them.
Yeah, you're right. Well,
Thanks
thank
for
you
being here in the
so
real life, though.
much.
It's nice to interact.
Yeah, nothing compares to the real experience. That's for sure.
Great.
Thank you so much. Thank you both.
Have a good night.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.